Students, good evening. Hope you all are fine. So, today we discuss Thomas Hardy. Very a little discussion about Thomas Hardy. Who is he and his famous works, right? So, Thomas Hardy was born in 2nd of June 1840 and died in 11th January 1928, and he was an English novelist and poet. A Victorian realist in the tradition of George Eliot. He was a Victorian realist and he was influenced both in his novels and in his poetry by romanticism, including his poetry by romanticism, including the poetry of William Wordsworth. He was very much influenced from romanticism and William Wordsworth. He was highly critical of much in Victorian society. So he was a big critic of Victorian society, especially on the declining status of rural people in Britain. And when he has shown in his in his novel Mayor of Casterbridge, where how declining status of rural people, how uh, mm, that's a hero of the novel Henchard, how he sails his wife, and then um, how he leads his life, and then number of mistakes and such thing, such as those from his native southwest England. He comes from southwest England, and he has criticized the society, rural society, Britain rural society, right? Now, while Hardy wrote poetry throughout his life, and interesting fact is that he wanted to be known as a poet, because throughout his life he writes poetry and regarded himself primarily as a poet, as I told you. His first collection was not published until 1898, but initially he gained fame as the author of novels. So he was the an author of novels, and he was famous very late, but very famous then, such as Far from the Madding Crowd, published in 1874, then The Mayor of Casterbridge 1886, and then Tess of the Ubervilles, very famous, right? 1891. Then Jude the Obscure, also famous, 1895. So he throughout his life he wrote poetry, but as he started writing novels, and he was very much famous. And during his lifetime, Hardy's poetry was acclaimed by younger poets, particularly the Georgians. So he was his poetry was famous and liked by young Georgians, right? And who viewed him as a mentor. And then that's a young Georgians. So that he was very much impressed with the um, Thomas Hardy. And after his death, his poems were lauded by Ezra Pound and W.H. Auden, Philip Larkin. All are very famous, celebrated authors, and then they liked Thomas Hardy's poetry, right? So this is also very interesting fact. Then here, just one more thing. Many of his novels concern tragic characters struggling against their passions and social circumstances. So we have seen that most of the time he has shown tragic, he has concluded his novel with tragedy. So tragic characters struggling against their passions and social circumstances. So what's the passion and what's the people are struggling with their against their passions, and they are struggling against their social circumstances. This way his novel depicted the tragic and an struggle in life. They are often set in the semi fictional region of Wessex. Yes, Wessex is the fictional place, region, uh, and that is similarly R.K. Narayan has created Malgudi. Similarly, here Thomas R.D. Created Wessex, so that's a semi-fictional. So some like that is. Not fully fictional, but yes, semi fictional, initially based on the medieval Anglo Saxon kingdom. So it was based on the Anglo Saxon kingdom, and Hardy's Wessex eventually came to include the uh, counties of Dorset, and then Wiltshire, Somerset, Devon, Hampshire, and much of Berkshire in southwest and south central. So that is why it became semi-fictional, because he has added these places also. And two of his novels, Tess of the D'Urberville Wills and Far from the Madding Crowd, were listed in the top 50 of on the BBC survey, The Big Road. So that's a very big achievement to him. So that is all. Here I have just read for you, and I think you have idea about, you must have idea about the Hardy. That's a life was okay, fine, and then he has created Wessex, one semi-fictional place region, where he has added incorporated other places also, like Wiltshire, Somerset, Devon, Hampshire, something something, and he was very much interested, very much influenced from William Wordsworth, Romanticism and all. So that is a little, and he was to be known as poet. He throughout his year life he had written poetry, but all of a sudden when he started writing novel, and novel made him very much famous, and then he is known as a novelist, because very famous novels he has written, as we have seen that the two of his novels, Tess and Far from Madding Crowd, are listed in first top 50 in by BCC survey. So that's a great achievement. So thank you so much. God bless you. If you have any query, you are most welcome.